1 Kings 19, it tells us that Elijah went into the wilderness and under a broom tree prayed that he might die. He crashed physically, emotionally, and spiritually. The man was completely down. Yet God did not condemn Elijah, but sent an angel which fed him, gave him a jar of water, and allowed him to rest. Depression, downtime, and discouragement hit every man, but with God's help, we can get back up and going again. Downtime isn't necessarily bad, but it needs to be understood and respected. When bad news hits and you crash, how can you find your way back? Dr. Roma Palcan will show us what the red flags of the dark side are and how to find our way back to the joy of the Lord. Welcome to Old Man, New Man. We're glad that Dr. Roma Palcan is joining us today from the great state of Florida. So welcome, Roma. We're glad you're here with us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
And Roma and I have worked together over the years on radio, and we have done television, but radio is what we did prime time 5 days a week for 3.5 years.
We had lots of fun, didn't we?
Yeah. In Tampa Bay is where we did that. And Roma, today we're talking about a very important topic, and you are one that works with men, and thousands of men actually, that deal with what we'll call the dark side. Now, the dark side, you gave it that title. What is the dark side?
Well, we're talking about male depression today. And there are different shades of male depression. And the gray side is when a man is feeling tired, irritable, nothing, no pleasure, withdrawn because he's really tired and he's collecting his resources.
So he's kind of disconnected from life in a way. He's
yes.
Not motivated,
yes.
Can't get up in the morning, just dragging in everything that he does.
Right.
Is it for a period of time, just a couple of days, or it goes for months
varies.
Or weeks?
It can go for months, weeks, years. It really can. Now, there's that gray side, and that's just a man feeling down. And then there's the dark side. That's where a man might start to feel some physical symptoms as well, like problem sleeping, changes in his eating, more irritability, more difficulty controlling his anger with others. And then he starts to become very resourceful. So he wants to avoid that unpleasant place in his life, so he might work too much, he might drink too much, he might get very involved in sports or hobbies, or he might try to make himself feel much better and go for fast cars, fast life, fast women, fast everything to get the adrenaline pumping.
And so you mentioned the different levels, the gray, the dark side that we're talking about today. Is there a deeper, more dangerous level?
Then there's a place where men feel black. There's despair, hopelessness, thoughts of ending their life or thoughts of death, thoughts of disappearing or just not waking up. And that's really, really black.
And that's the most dangerous one. So we're talking today pretty much about the dark side.
The middle ground. But you know what? Everything that we say is going to be applied to all of those areas. And it really applies to men and women.
Okay. And for men, I understand that for some time it wasn't even diagnosed until more recently.
Well, it's been diagnosed for a long time. However, it's a little more challenging to diagnose a man. It seems, in my experience, that women have certain characteristics of depression and men others, and it takes, what some say, it takes about 3 times to a health provider to identify depression because of the different way that men experience it, with more irritability, more emptiness of feeling as opposed to feeling depressed or sad or blue.
So instead of feeling sad or blue, I heard you mention some different emotions like anger.
Yes. Irritability.
Or
nothing.
Or nothing, just plain
no pleasure.
Numb.
Yes.
And so when a man sees these are like red flags for him to
yes.
be cautious, be aware, be careful.
Sometimes people say that depression is a bad thing and do everything that you can to eliminate it. Depression, in my opinion, is not a bad thing. It's an important mechanism that we are designed with to flag us when something in our lives needs attention, sort of like a signal on a street.
It's a warning.
Yes, slow down if you're working too hard or something like that, or stop.
So it's the body kind of warning you that you need to be still for a little while, recover, regain your strength. So it's not all bad.
Absolutely not. It's essential. We're designed for that. It feels so miserable, you need to act.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes me think of the prophet Elijah. When Elijah was, after the great victory he had on Mount Carmel, and he was running from Jezebel and from her threat, and how it was that when he got to that place, that mountain, he said to the Lord, "Oh, I wish I was dead."
Right. After such an amazing time, he was exhausted. Mm-hmm. He needed rest.
And the Lord allowed him to rest.
Yes.
That's interesting that God didn't push him back and say, "Oh, get back to work," but said, "Rest a while."
Right.
Recover physically. Right. Okay.
Yes.
And now I know that David also is one that went through these ups and downs.
Yes, he did.
Different prophets. We know Jeremiah did.
Yes.
One of my favorite psalms regarding this is Psalm 77, where the Psalm of Asaph, where he was so down, but then he started to remember the things God had done for him.
His thinking changed.
His thinking changed.
Yes.
And he began to recover.
There are some beautiful tools, beautiful ideas to keep in mind when you are experiencing depression. I'd like to talk about them today.
Let's talk about those. Tell us.
When a person is depressed, the first thing that they want to know is, am I all alone? That's how they feel. They feel alone, very alone. And if it is a man of faith, he's going to say, well, where's God? Mm-hmm. That's sort of like in the Psalm of 77.
Like the 77, and Elijah also thought he was the only one that was left of God's people.
Yes.
Of the prophets.
And it's important to know that depression has its own language. It's very interesting. And depression will say to you, you're alone, you're a failure, you can't do anything, you're powerless, you're helpless, you can't control the situation. It says you're alone and no one understands and no one cares. Depression speaks to us.
And it lies to us.
Absolutely. Now, it's a very good flag to say, do something different, because these thoughts are horrible to experience. However, the truth is, and David was the one who said something really cool about this. He said, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. Well, when you look at the original language, it really was, surely goodness and mercy shall pursue me. Now, David was a warrior. He pursued his enemies and defeated them. When he talks about pursuing, he talks about an aggressive pursuit, nothing passive. So in his darkest hour, David knows that God is pursuing him, but he feels
all alone.
All alone.
You know, it's interesting as you share that with us, that the Bible talks about the fact that the battle goes on in our mind, in our thoughts, and how David, even as a warrior, as king of Israel, had to battle with these thoughts and feeling down, alone at times, and he would cry out to the Lord. And some of his most beautiful psalms came from those sad times. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things you're pointing out is that the thoughts will lie to us.
Yes.
But what other things happen?
Other thoughts, other important aspects of thinking. I think that the thing that trips us most is when we think that we are powerless and our situation is hopeless. For instance, someone gets a diagnosis that's horrible. They think, well, my life is done. The thing that you need to remember is we are people of many choices. We've been designed that way. Jesus came and lived and died for our ability to choose or not choose him. This is another place where depression doesn't speak accurately to us. We do have choices. There was a man by the name of Viktor Frankl who was a concentration camp survivor. Mm-hmm. He was stripped of all of his dignity. He lost everything. He was a psychiatrist. And they actually even started experimenting on his body. And he was able to hang on to one last piece of dignity, and that was, at least they cannot affect my ability to choose how I will respond to the people who are mutilating me. Mm. It's essential to remember that you have a choice, that things are not hopeless.
At oldmannewman.com, you can watch this program and many others that will help you along life's journey. There, you will also find the contact information of our guests, along with resources that will further equip you. The Bible tells us in 2 Corinthians 5:17 that if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has gone and the new has come. Ladies, when the men we love are strong and happy, we too are happier. We are here to equip the men with proven biblical information for success in their Christian adventure. Send us an email with any questions or comments you may have. Pastor Minner and I would love to hear from you. Old Man, New Man, dedicated to equipping God's men for this life and beyond.
Now, Roma, the doctor can bring a diagnosis, and we can have things happen to us like you shared of Victor. Now, what happens so often is in this economy, we have so many men that have lost their identity, perhaps, as men, because they have lost their jobs, perhaps they've lost their reputation, or they have a physical limitation now. And so what would you counsel regarding that reality that so many men are facing?
Many men have walked into my office and they have said, I have lost a sense of who I am. For the last 20 years, 40 years, I don't know who I am anymore. And I will sit with them, and sometimes they will have disabilities, their bodies are broken, they're older, they feel like they're falling apart, not attractive anymore, and I will help them to find themselves.
How do you do that?
Well, first I ask them questions about how they see themselves. So, for instance, if you were a patient of mine, I would say, the man that I see in front of me, is that who you are? What I see, is that who you are? And they will say, no. Well, sometimes they'll say yes. If their bodies were very important, they were construction workers, they needed their bodies, they will say, yeah, and I'm a mess. And then I'll say something like, well, you know what? If I was in an accident and my legs were cut off, would I be half a woman? And they would, of course, say, no, my goodness, you just be Dr. Palcan without her legs. And so I would help the men to identify that, you know what? You're not your body. You're not your body.
It's so hard. What you're saying is wonderful, but it's just hard because we identify with our physical ability.
Absolutely.
If we're blue-collar workers, or our ability as white-collar workers,
Absolutely.
Or whatever it may be, but to not be able to not feel as a whole man. So what you're bringing out is that you begin to show them how they are more than just two legs if they're missing them.
Right. They're much more than who they are in their body. I'll sometimes say, have you ever seen a loved one dead in a casket? And when you saw them, is that who they were? And they would say, no, that's just their body. And I help them to remember that they're much more than what their body is. And then I'll ask, well, are you your emotions? Because many of these men feel failure through and through. And
but emotions will lie to them, like you're saying.
Emotions can certainly lie, and I will give them the example of if a hurricane goes through a city and it ravages the city, will that be the same city Well, yes, of course. And I said, well, that's how emotions are. It ravages you. And it changes the landscape of your face. However, that's not who you are. Mm-hmm. And if you think that you're a failure, a loser, your thoughts can even be confused in depression. And so these gentlemen will come to a place and say, okay, well, I'm not my body, I'm not my emotions, I'm not my thoughts, and then I'll go to, are you your job or your career? That's a tough one.
Are you just a paycheck?
Is that what you are? Are you your bank account? Are you your successes or your failures? This is a tough conversation.
Because in our culture, Roma, we are taught to believe that we are what we do, what we have, or what people say about us. And that's not true, because who we are is far better and far more secure than just those three things.
Finally, they'll say, okay, if that's not what I am, if I'm all of these things that it's not me, what am I? Who am I? And I then, if a person is a man of faith, then I will ask, well, what does your faith say? What does God say that you are? And oftentimes they'll say, well, I'm a son of God.
Amen. And I want to share with you and our viewers that in Luke chapter 4, when Satan tempted Jesus, every temptation that had to do with the three things we're talking about, just interesting how you brought these out, about you are what you do, you're a miracle worker. You are what you have, all these things I'll give you if you bow down to me. You are what people say about you if you jump from the top of the temple. But he always qualified the temptation with, if you are the Son of God. And so they could take away our job, they can take away our money, possessions, and they can even take our reputation. But we want our listeners, our viewers, to know that they can never take away the fact that you are a son of God. You are a daughter of God. You belong to the Most High God. And that's where the identity is that I believe you're referring to.
And who is God? He says, I am your family. I am the way. I am your peace. I am your rest. He goes on and on to describe how he is our Savior.
He's our all in all.
When we are connected with his majesty, then that gives us grounding that we would not have otherwise. So we know we're not all these other things that change. We are connected with royalty. That is important.
Okay.
That helps.
So connect, you're saying connect to God. That's your identity. Connect to the Lord.
It's
as
strong.
A son of God.
It's a very strong thing. Yet a man still needs to struggle with the issue of identity and acceptance. You will say, okay, I'm not all this. I've lost everything. I miss these different things about my life. And, for instance, a man who struggled with an injury. I don't like who I am now. I liked my life before. Or the man who's lost everything financially. I don't like this. I liked it before.
It's okay not to like it.
It's okay not to like it.
And we don't have to embrace that.
Yes. Isn't that a beautiful, simple concept? It's okay not to like it. It is.
But if we can't change the fact that it's there and that we're having to deal with it, we can change in little ways, little attitudes.
Yes.
About how we choose to feel.
Yes. And so the next step in the process of healing is to find something that you can do, the easiest thing that you can do to move, to
Baby
get yourself
steps, little steps,
very small, something that is in order of difficulty. So if your life consists of your computer and your TV in your house, then it might mean for you to turn off the TV and step outside on your porch or listen to music, do something different. And it's very important that you understand that it's only until you do something different that things start to truly change in terms of the darkness in your life.
So to get out of that dark side and doing these little different things, the ones we can control, the ones we can directly impact. That begins to get us out of that dark side or that experience. Now, you've talked about our identity being in Christ, and we mentioned the Son of God that we are, and how it is that now we begin to take steps that are positive. What are some other tools that you can give the men to help them through this journey? We have these foundational things. Give us some more information on how we can get out of the dark side.
Well, remember how I was talking about how King David said that goodness and mercy pursue him. So know that in your darkness, God is pursuing you actively and aggressively. And He's going to show you goodness. He's going to throw you the life raft. And a man who is a healthy man has been raised in our society to be very self-sufficient.
Which is very dangerous, because that's one of the reasons we don't ask for help.
Yes, sir.
Until it's sometimes so late.
Yes, yes.
So I want to encourage our men to ask for help, talk to someone, and begin the process of healing.
Absolutely. And that help can be found in a friend, in your loved one, children, wife, girlfriend. It could be found in a counselor. It could be found in your doctor. It could be found in medical treatment.
So at times, is medical treatment necessary?
Absolutely.
Sometimes it is.
Absolutely, because sometimes living in the darkness is a result of a medical problem, or it is the result of a genetic factor that predisposes you to a life of depression. And there are all sorts of different kind of depression.
So there are times that it's appropriate to seek that.
Absolutely, and that's wise.
And so God is there with you. He's going to help you. He's going to sustain you. Seek help. Talk to a friend. Talk to someone else. And what are some other tools, some baby steps, or something we could take that we can, where the rubber meets the road, with all this good information you've given us, what else can we do just as we wind down here?
Okay. Goal setting is very important.
Setting goals.
Like I said, start with something that's easiest for you to do.
Okay.
Be specific about the goal. Don't say, I want to exercise more. Hold yourself to something specific, something recordable.
Recordable, something you can measure.
Yes.
Qualify.
You bet. And you know what? Join up with someone. Oftentimes in our self-sufficiency, we believe that we can do all of this ourselves. Well, think about how long you've been suffering. I think about men who have been just diagnosed with a terminal illness and they only have 6 months to live, and they have been depressed for a long, long time. It's amazing how sometimes the depression lifts.
Really?
And it's not because, I'm going to finally die. You know, it's not that. They're healthy men. But they realize time is precious, and I'm going to shift. And we really don't understand the dynamics of that too well.
So you mentioned to set goals that we can qualify, that we can measure.
That have a time frame.
Okay.
Your time is very precious.
Okay, what else can we do?
It's just very important to recognize the accountability that is necessary.
Accountability.
It's giant.
Very important.
Yeah, it's giant.
Okay.
When I work with men in groups, for instance, and one person is trying to achieve some improvements, that accountability that they give to each other, strong men, smart men who have been stuck, they push each other.
That's why I believe, Roma, that church and men's ministries is so important, because we have to have those kind of bonds or relationships where we can turn to someone and ask for help. And if you don't have that in your local church, maybe your pastor you can talk to, one of the leaders there, a counselor, of course, is always good. And so these are things that, Roma, you're helping us to know how to get through the dark side if we fall into it. Every man goes through it, undeniably. And so these are tools to help us. Any further words as we wind down for the men?
Remember that depression comes in all shades. It's a time of being down and tired, and rest is necessary.
Okay.
Trust the way that your body is signaling you. It's designed for that. Listen to it. And then, when you are experiencing that gloominess because you're just simply fatigued, if you just give yourself permission to rest, you will do very, very well. And you will shrink that gloominess significantly. You won't suffer that long. Your body's telling you to do that. Excellent. So remember that there are shades of depression. Remember that depression serves a purpose of restoration.
Okay.
And remember that each person is unique. And there really is no wrong way of rebuilding your life. Mm-hmm. I have never seen one depression the same as another because I've never seen the same man.
So it's all different.
Yes, and every path is unique.
Well, Dr. Palcan, thank you for helping us to understand the dark side. And it's God's will that every one of us would find the road to healing, to joy, and to recovery. And so before we go, we'd like to offer a prayer with you. We'd like to pray that God will bring you out of the darkness and into His glorious and marvelous light. And so if you've been struggling with some dark things, difficult downtimes, we want to pray with you just now. So right where you're at, right where you are, Roma and I would like to have a prayer with you. Just bow your heads where you are. Father in heaven, you know who he is. And he's watching this program and he's been hurting for some time. Lord, we ask your blessing upon him. And if it's one of your daughters that is watching as well, we ask that you help her also to find healing. Lord, you do not desire for us to be suffering, nor sad, nor down. But you want us to be happy and excited and to bring you glory. Lord, help them to see your blessings in their lives. May your Holy Spirit bring clarity, discernment, and joy is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you for joining us on Old Man, New Man.